Welcome to episode 19 of Super States, Practices of Transformation with me, your host, Joshua Peters. Super States explores the crossroads of trance states in all the many ways you can access it, along with personal or professional growth. In every episode of Super States, we talk to world-class experts, industry leaders, and revolutionary thinkers who share the latest information, tools, and their own personal stories to inspire you on your journey. This week, I talk with Craig Cassey. Craig is a professional pleasure coach, helping clients create relationships and businesses that turn them on and get them off. Tune in and turn on to the power of slowing down with Craig Cassey. Welcome to the show, Craig. I'm delighted to have you on the show today.
Happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
All right, great. Well, Craig, why don't you describe to us what it is that you do, just to kind of get started here, and then how that can transform people's lives.
Totally. So currently I work as a professional coach. Specifically, I call it a pleasure coach. So I'm the guy you come to when you want to build a business or create a relationship, maybe transition your current relationship into one that really turns you on. Spiritually, emotionally, energetically, physically as well, and also gets you off. Because we're not here to create blue balls in your life. We want you to be turned on, to have the experience of joy, and then to be able to create what it is through to fruition. So we do somatic work, a lot of mindset shifting, but we work mainly in the body right now, helping people tap back into what they might have lost during the pandemic.
And I know that the somatic work is one of the things that really interests me about what you do, because that's a whole nother way of really accessing these trance states that can make such a difference. Craig, can you tell me, give us a little bit of your story, like how you got to this point? Share your own transformation.
Yeah, I'll give the abridged version. I never meant to do this work. Coaching, yeah. My sister grew up with terrible anxiety, and I was like her soothsayer as a child. So this felt like a very natural progression for me. But I also grew up in a really puritanical household, which meant, hey, we never talked about sex. Never got the bird and the bee conversation. I had to Google that one. Much less exciting than I thought it would be. And we didn't really have a focus on pleasure. The focus in the family was living a good life in the Lord's name. Struggle was in, a way to honor God. We weren't trying to live overly pleasurable lives, at least consciously. We still had a good life, I would say, but there's a weird ceiling I find in a lot of puritanical households, people who grew up waspy or in a conservative church, which is we don't give ourselves permission to actually get curious. But what is it that would make my soul light up? What about my body's desires? Today I relate to myself as a spirit in a lovely meat sack, but I'm a spirit here to experience all I can on earth. And that means all the feelings, good and bad, all the desires and wants that come with, being a person. So when I got on the other side of college, it dawned on me that I was mirroring a lot of what I saw growing up. I was working 80-hour weeks, trying to build startups. Some were doing really well, some were not. And I was really unfulfilled. I felt like at the end of the day, I had forgotten how to live. And that's really not what I'm committed to. My relationships were suffering, even though I was more successful than I think a lot of people would, compare people at my age to. And my soul was just aching. So ended up doing a few different things, created this coaching business, hopped in some coaching work as a client especially, that made it really clear that there was a huge disconnect between where I was going for my conditioning as a really pious puritanical boy and trying to be successful on those terms versus what I really wanted, which was a much more, I'd say, open, I'm a queer man, so much more queer, much more gay lifestyle that enabled me to really savor all that life has to offer and to no longer pretend like my spirituality and my pleasure had to be separate, or like one came at the cost of the other, because that's not the truth, at least in my
Hmm.
book.
And and then you so some at some point you started working with the body and not just coaching. How did that occur for you?
So by accident is the truth. When I first began coaching, I wanted to keep coaching people in startups and corporate. And the way that I actually got into somatic work is I have a background in yoga and mindfulness. And around the 3 month work, each one of my corporate clients would start to ask me about their relationships. And was not my focus, was not my training, but ethically we go there. And time again, each one of these people would mention how they were so disconnected from their body when it came to sex and their partnerships, or even when it came to being in relationship with a vision, right? When we envisioned
Mm.
a future, a bold future, that is not just a brainy process. That is an experience of our body, right? And our brain, and I'd say our spirit, all firing on the same cylinders.
Yeah.
So I recognize these people were deeply cut off, maybe by shame or past pain. And so I started doing some of the breath work that I knew would really help people, A, just create more safety in their body so they would have access to what it is they really wanted. And that is what I think is so powerful about somatic work, right? Somatic is just we work with the body, we work with the nervous system to create a sense of safety. So then you have access to whatever it is you want, right? Sometimes it's you want to be more turned on by your partner of a 15-year relationship, and somatic work can help you get there. Other times it's you need to create some physical safety so you can feel angry or you can feel sad and release the hold those emotions have on your body if you haven't been able to express them before. So, because of my client needs, went back, got more training, brought my positive psychology background to my yoga background to a ton of somatic workshops and sex therapy training school too, to create what I think is a really impactful offering right now for people.
So, what would you say has fundamentally changed about how you work with people from when you started until now that you have this new offering?
Yeah, so coaching is a future focused profession. And when I first began, I was really focused on getting people to their future now. It was a conversation of speed, agility, and action. And I think in the last 5 years, especially, what I've witnessed is when we slow down, create more safety in the body, and then attune with what we actually want, everything comes so much more quickly. It might feel slower in the moment, but we stop doing all the bullshit that wasn't actually serving us anyway. The stuff that we had to do, that we felt we needed to do, the things that we related to as suffering, but kept doing anyway. So my work today actually looks a lot more slow. It looks a
Mm.
lot more still. It's focused both on actions, yes, but it's also grounded in how do we just be with what's present and then witness where we're being led. Somatic work, when we are in fight or flight, we don't always have access to our intuition as much as we want. We don't always have access to the pain or the pleasure that's inspiring us to go in a different direction because we're numbing to it. So by slowing down, everything becomes so much clearer and we get to the heart of the matter much more rapidly. So slowing down has made a huge difference.
Yeah, I resonate with that both in my coaching as well and also in my life, right? When I slow down, and it's in all different kinds of situations, but especially in relationship, that's a really important lesson to learn, I think.
Yeah. Not always the easiest. When I'm in a relationship breakdown, the last thing I want to do is sit in it and sit with it. But that's where all the gold is. That's where the opportunity to actually heal and create really luscious intimacy. And I think that always shocks people is that when you're in the middle of a shit storm, that's actually an amazing time to open up your heart and to create something really special, even when your automatic, body's response is saying, no, stop, run away, shut them out or judge them, make it their fault. It's like if you can learn to turn that off, oh, it gets so good.
Well, Craig, do you have a technique that someone who might want to learn how to slow that down and step into those moments could benefit from?
Oh, totally. Would you actually want to be walked through one right now? I've got
Oh,
a
sure.
3-part
Yeah.
process. It could be fun.
Okay.
So, if you're listening, what we're about to do, it is an exercise you can use with your partner at any time, even yourself. Is especially useful when you find that you are triggered and you want to get back to a nervous system state where you actually feel safe. So you can be more open to communication. And this is one of the real keys of the work, right? If we are in fight or flight, if we are triggered or in a win lose battle up in our heads with our partner, we're not in partnership. We're
Yeah.
now trying to either win or not lose. So this is
Right.
a way to get back on the same page where you have access to being in relationship. So first, it's simple. We'll do 3 rounds of 3. We're just going to take a deep breath in through your nose, and then open mouth exhale. We're just turning the nervous system on and getting some access to it. So another deep inhale in through your nose, breathing down to your gut if you can, and open mouth exhale. Final one here. Breathe all the way in as much as you can. Biggest breath of the day. And a slow open mouth exhale. So one of the ways we begin to work with the nervous system is by creating access to it through the physical responses we can control, right? So through breath work, we can slow down the heart. So that's what we're doing here.
Okay.
Now, step 2, sometimes when we're triggered, our body has a desired response, right? When you're triggered, are you loosey-goosey, Joshua, or are you
No,
rigid and
tight.
tight?
I'm tight. I'm tense. I'm not even really thinking.
Oh,
It's all in the back of in the amygdala is activated.
oh,
Yeah.
totally. For
Yeah.
me, my white knuckle life when I'm triggered and my jaws, I'm a jaw person. I will
Yeah.
grind
Yeah.
sweat in order not to speak. So the second part of this, we actually want to give the body some room to express that tightness, to let some of that emotion from the trigger actually move through our body. So we're going to take a deep inhale, and at the top, you're actually going to squeeze your body as much as you can. So that means your face, your fists, your core, and then we'll
Okay.
release and shake it out.
So
So
it's like a tension everywhere, like
oh,
tighten all the
totally, as
muscles.
much as you can, from your back to your hold, your face, everything counts. So
Okay.
we'll take a deep inhale here. And now, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Oh, as hard as you can. Your face, your back, your toes, your hands. And release. And we just shake it out a little bit. Shake your head, shoulders. Do it again. When you're ready, take a deep breath in. And at the top, squeeze again. Harder, harder, harder. And release. We shake it out. Just feels good to get some of the tension out in
That feels
general.
good. It does. Yeah.
And final one here. Take a deep inhale. And in a different posture, squeeze as tight as you can. Tighter, 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 and and release. So, like right now, only 2 exercises in. What do you notice, if anything, Joshua? What do you feel?
I feel looser, which is interesting from being in that tension place. My mind is quieter.
We love a quiet mind, don't
Hmm.
we? So definitely people feel more grounded. They release some tension. Their shoulders will relax down their back. And when our bodies are more relaxed and our partner sees this, their body gains permission to do the same. Right? If we walk into a conversation, if we're talking to a manager, we are the manager, or in our relationship, and we look like we're about to be armed, like we're in defensive mode, we are ready to
Hmm.
fight, it's actually going to trigger the same physiological and nervous system response in the other person. So by doing this, we're actually creating a clearing. We're opening the door. And whether we are saying the words or not, our body is saying, hey, we're safe here. We're calm. We're collected. No matter what topic pops up, we can be with it. Like we've got this. So what a huge gift to give your partner if they're anxious or triggered, or
Yeah.
a gift to give yourself. Final round. Have you ever done like you wake up in the morning, you take that big morning stretch?
Yes.
Okay.
Love
It's
that.
delicious. And we're going to recreate that here. I'll tell you why after the fact. So we're going to take a big inhale, and at the top, reach your arms up in any way your body wants. Really, whatever feels good to your body, just twist and try to create a yawn. If you don't get there, it's fine. If you get there, cool. There's no point system. So
Okay.
take a deep inhale here. And whatever way you want to stretch, arms up and over, side to side. Oh, see, Joshua, only one. Already there.
Got it.
We'll do that 2 more times. So take another deep inhale. And whatever new way you want to stretch. If you want to bend forward, you can. Roll your shoulders. That's contagious.
Yeah.
And the final one here. Final inhale, deeps of the day. All right. What are you present to now, Joshua?
Well, that brought like more energy for sure. Like I could feel that opening, and uh, as I'm stretching and twisting my back, and bones are cracking. It seemed to kind of release an energy for me.
Totally. You look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed right now, I can tell you that. And it's a mixture of both being more energized while also being grounded. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we experience energy as we're no longer grounded, and we're in action or in movement, and we begin to lose a sense of, ourselves. But when it comes to building up intimacy in your sex life, like you want to both be deeply grounded and present in the moment and have this fun energy tied into it so that you can really get the most out of the experience and also give the most. Create something that you really want with your partners.
Yeah.
So, this last one, we get this actually from watching animals in the wild. You'll never find an animal who's being chased or who is doing the chasing yawn while they're being hunted or hunting. Will you?
Sure.
Yeah.
No.
So when we're actually in that defensive posturing and our body is actually not feeling safe, we don't have access to that yawn in the mouth. Like we will just never. It's a great way to know if you're on the road to burnout, is if this is actually one of your first times yawning in a long time.
Mm.
Because when we look at coaching clients in burnout, their body is actually in such a defensive posturing for weeks and months and years, right? That the only times they do slow down, they typically, find themselves exhausted because they gave themselves the space to relax. And it doesn't always feel great when they're used to, being high
Yeah.
performing every other
Yeah.
day. So what we do here is by generating what it takes to yawn and giving the body more room, we're really grounding in the nervous system this belief that, I have permission. I am safe enough in my body where I can just be, I can relax, and whatever comes will not faze me. Does mean we don't get triggered, we do, but this gives us a much more even playing field to be with it.
Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that was 3 steps. Step one was those 3 deep breaths.
Yep.
Step two was tension and release, like all the tension, all the release. And step 3 was a big old stretch and a yawn.
A
And
lush.
each one of those was repeated 3 times.
Yep. So 3 sets of 3. The way I was taught it, we call it the stoplight exercise, because it really does help you ground, pause, and then get back to where you want to be more likely. And great to teach kids too. It can be really fun to use solo. The one asterisk I always put in here is our body learns how to respond to everything, right? So if we're
Yeah.
used to being triggered and responding with anger or aggression or shutting down, then the way we actually gain access to using a tool like this in that moment is to actually do this work when you're feeling good, feeling neutral. Like we want
Sure.
to actually teach the body that, okay, when things are good, I can use this. And what does my body learn? Oh, I feel more relaxed. Oh, I feel more present. Oh, this is
Mm.
advantageous. So we give it the skills and the muscles now so that when we get to those triggered places, our body says, oh, I have another way I can go. You still have to choose it. It might not always be the first automatic, it might be the second or the third, and that's
Yeah,
okay. But we want to do this work when we're feeling good so that we can use it when we really need it the most.
I like that. Good. Uh, Craig, you s- this is maybe me putting a little bit of my own knowledge onto you, but you seem like a person that likes to continue learning.
Always. That's why I'm here, isn't it?
So where do you go to educate yourself?
Oh, everywhere. So I will say, most recently, my personal learning, not non-professional, but the personal that impacts that, as I've been doing a lot more work with plant medicine.
Hmm.
So I had a lovely ayahuasca journey a year ago. If you feel called to it, recommend it in whatever safe place makes sense for you. Um, and that really gave me a lot of awareness for just how life could be different.
Hmm.
And when it comes to where I seek out learning opportunities these days, hey, there's a skill in everything. I'm about to move into Australia so I can go get another grad degree. I'm going to learn a ton about positive psychology, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and even some more somatic work down there. But I think one of the best places to look is really at, if we take a step back from our current context, like where would the actual education nurture the world that I want to live in? And then how could I learn how I can be the one of the pieces of the puzzle to get us there? So from plant medicine, ayahuasca and mushrooms, beyond that, I right now am dipping my toes in even more of the somatic work and a lot of the kink work that can be somatic. Part of my business is really around helping people live more passion filled and pleasure filled sexual lives.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really fascinating work around integrating our shadow or our darker desires, as some would call it,
Yeah.
and also being able to create these relationships that contain a lot of duality and then some. We've got a wife who's an amazing mom, we see her be tender and sweet, but she also wants to be, sexual goddess, dirty and raunchy, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And learning how we can be with all of that and also honor all of that has been a real interesting development, even in my own relationship. And so I'm
Hmm.
enjoying learning a lot more about that. That comes from more mentors in my community, um, and about as much sex research as one can find from actual scholars.
Yeah. There's something that is really fascinating around how the kink world is very much about personal development.
Oh, entirely. You would never think so when you're on Pornhub.com watching it, and then you get into it, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, it's very fascinating. What would you say that someone in your industry should either start doing or stop doing?
Mm. I'm going to sit with that for a juicy moment. So, two thoughts. The first is this. So, I call myself a pleasure coach, and you'll find a ton of people who are coaching for like pleasurable living online.
Hmm.
Love all these people. And there feels like a real gap between creating a life that feels good and then learning to do the work that honestly feels like crap and creating pleasure in that process,
Mm.
right? So the thing that I wish more people would do is that we're not just aiming to create lives where everything is honky-dory, but everything is great or feels amazing. We want lives where we're fulfilled and happy, but a piece to get there is we also need to learn to create pleasure in the cathartic qualities of healing, of us dying 1,000 times as we grow into new persons, which honestly I think in the Western world we lack a lot of skills around grieving,
Yeah.
and learning also how to be with the times when things really do feel a bit hellish.
Hmm.
Not everything is meant to last forever. We're meant to go through cycles and to experience of pain and I'd say even the trauma of living, because it gives us access to so much more. But I think a lot of people after this work, they're like, oh, well, I want to feel better. And it's like, that's great. You're going to. And along the way, there are going to be times when you really don't. And you're
Yeah.
going to be like, wow. So I wish more people would speak to how do we generate pleasure in that experience, not by changing it or diluting it or softening it, but by creating perspective that says, even though I don't like this part, I know it serves and nourishes me. And this is not meant to be gaslighting in any way. If there are things in your life that you don't like or that are unhealthy, please, make the choice to get support and leave. But in other times of the work, you really come to a mirror and say, oh, you know, I have caused heartbreak in myself, or maybe heartbreak in others. And there is something beautiful about sitting in that painful ownership that gives
Mm.
you space for everything else.
And as you were describing that, it made me think of kind of how you started the conversation. I forget the exact term that you use, but that you're living in this body, right? We're in this experience, and part of that experience, it's both sides. We're not living in these flesh bodies to only feel good things. We're
Mhm.
here to experience the huge range of what the physical world can show us
Because how
and
boring
teach
would
us.
that be? It's like, are you a foodie? I'm a foodie. Do you like food?
I do. I love
Okay.
food.
So I think of it like this, and there are people who will always stay in the negative, and people who will try to only be in the positive. And I think you and I would agree that the real magic of life happens on the middle when you're with it all. But it's like if you were to only eat sweets nonstop, right? Sugar, candy, even if you just only ate fruit and nothing else, eventually you get to the point where that's not doing it. It's monotonous. There's no texture, no depth. And you
Hmm.
actually, like your body, if you were only to eat sweets without access to things like salt or other flavors, you would lose perception of just how sweet and luscious a thing can be. Like it would actually dull your experience of food and I would say of life. Now, on
Yeah.
the flip side, if you're only going to be licking on a salt chew like a dog does sometimes, then it's also going to, hey, maybe not be the most enjoyable thing if you're sitting in your own bitterness, and it's going to dull your experience of life. So, the real beauty of cooking, and I think of living, is we take some of the salt and we use it to season the things. It gives us access to appreciating and actually sensing more sweetness in our food. And the same thing in life. We hear it all the time, the bad times make the good times even better. It's an overused phrase. And yet, when we can actually sit with the depth of the salt or the darkness or the pain and sit with, right, the beauty and
Hmm.
the graciousness and the joy, it really does make things feel different. It makes everything feel human, but at the same time more beautiful. And in that slowness, that's where I think we really have a ton of access to pleasure and spirituality, like commingling in that moment.
Yeah. I like that. What would you say is the most misunderstood aspect of being a pleasure coach?
Based on my DMs, it'd be people asking if I was hands on and when they can book a session. I get that. Some very lovely people are like, I'd love for you to pleasure coach me. And I'm like, I'm not sure we're on the same page. Here's my website and an agreement. You can look at it. So there's that. Um, the other part I'll say is I think people do not always understand that it's going to be a very deeply holistic process.
Uh-huh.
And that pleasure is not a place to get to, it's a place to come from and to generate in your internal world. I think a lot of us in the West, at least, and I've got clients in Singapore and Berlin and Australia too, but we look at pleasure as like a destination that we have to get to one day, as if it's not always within reach. It's the same thing with spirituality. Sometimes we feel like we have to be someone or get somewhere to have access to spirit, as if we're not just swimming in it or breathing it every
Right.
single day. So I really think for those who come because they want more physical pleasure, I love that. Here for it, cheer it on every day. Um, I would also invite them to consider that this is really about your humanity as a whole having access to pleasure. And you're going to learn some physical stuff you can do with your partner. Totally. Odds are there's other stuff under the hood that's going to make more of an impact. And it's going to be messy and delicious. Your favorite kind of chocolate fondue fountain at a bat mitzvah, same kind of thing. Very messy, very fun. You might need some cleaning up after, and that's okay.
What would you? How do you think is? How can we help people understand what this really means?
I honestly think being in the work will do the most good for most people. I think
Mm.
everyone, you as like a hypnotherapist too, I'm sure you're on the outside looking in, and sometimes you wonder, is this snake oil or is this real?
Yeah.
So, hey, giving it a try I think makes a difference. But if you're listening and you're curious, I think you can even just do a quick assessment with your own body around what will actually support you having the life that you want. So, some questions to ask are you feeling tight and clenched and defensive? Like, just go through your body. Where are you feeling tight or clenched and defensive? And if you met someone who was showing up that way, how would you engage with them differently? Or how would you feel differently being around them? I find we're not very competent self perceivers of our
Mm.
own impact. And
Mm-hmm.
it's why in like relationship coaching, one of my favorite practices for couples is to say, okay, let's pause and ask yourself, what is it like to date you right now? What is it like to date yourself? If you were your partner, what would you be present to? What would you be aware of? So if you come up, you're like, oh, I notice I'm anxious before this new business call. I'm a little bit stressed out about going home. I'd rather be at work for an extra hour or two because I know there's stuff I'm avoiding. And you imagine if you met someone who was similarly in that spot and you're the one at home, you might realize, oh, if I was able to be more grounded, in touch with my body, if I didn't walk through my front door afraid or on edge, then my partner might actually receive me with a hug.
Mm.
Or even if my partner had a rough day, they would feel like I could be with them and support them and connect with them in a way that would actually make a difference instead of them hiding those feelings because they were afraid that I would respond in a negative way.
Yeah.
So this kind of just like self-assessment, if you notice these things are present, you are tight, you are on edge, you are scared. And these are human experiences. They're not bad. Like we get these because we're living life and we maybe don't create the space to tend to them, to move them through our bodies or create the skills that we need to get back to a grounded place. You don't learn this in school. You don't really learn this in sex ed either. I wish. Trust me, I'm going to have a book out one day, I'm sure, that people can use for this. But these are the physical embodiments of a lot of emotions and a lot of stress that, unless we do the work with the body to release them and heal past trauma, they're going to be the things that actually lead the way in our conversations without us even knowing it.
I like that. Um, it. I don't know what. I don't know what else to add to it. It's super important to tune into our bodies, and um, it actually made me think of times in my life when I was doing exactly what you just described, like avoiding coming home because of all the things that were there. So it took me to to those moments, and how, yeah, things would have been a lot different if I had been able to put myself in the other person's shoes. And I also came to realize I actually do that a lot more now, and that is, and my partner does too. Like, we do that for each other. We're often looking to see how we can show up to be better, in a better place for them.
Totally. It is vulnerable. It can be scary at times. So I'll, self-disclose, for my relationship, I'm the one with the more avoidance side. I come by
Mm.
that naturally being a waspy child. I think there's a lot of avoidance in our community. My partner trends on the anxiously attached side.
Okay.
So, as we've really worked to heal these different relationship dynamics that would normally keep us at odds or kind of missing each other in communication, one of the things I became present to is as the avoidant half, it really is a diligent step. Like it's a choice. Like I don't naturally arrive at the place where I'm imagining what it's like dating me or imagining what my partner feels because it's opening up a vulnerability that the avoidant side would rather not be with. It's easier to
Hmm.
not do it. But the more that I've slowed down to actually sit with my impact, even when we're on the other side of an argument, it helps me be more tender and we repair our wounds so much more quickly. Especially, after I'm fed a nice meal, I get hangry when I'm not fed, so we mitigate that. But that access to tenderness really has made a difference. And even right now, my partner is on vacation. We have most vacations together, we do some separately, and he's living his best life. And one of the things that really fills up my cup when we're having these separate experiences, I'm here working and loving it. He's surrounded by 10,000 other gay men, having the time of his life. Is when I imagine how he feels knowing he has a partner supporting him and living out these new fantasies that maybe are not mine, to be frank, and that's fair. It happens to many of us.
Hmm.
And he can actually feel like he can be authentic and cheered on. Like there's no part of him that he has to hide. That all these parts are worthy of love. Even if, I'm not there with him in the moment, I cheered on and give permission.
Yeah.
And as I sit in what the experience of that support must be like, it helps fill up my cup. And I think, oh, wow, like this is exactly what I would want as a partner. And so knowing I get to give that to him feels good to me, helps me enjoy it a lot more too, when I'm long distancing it with the boyfriend. And I know when he does the same thing for me, it helps calm down his anxious attachment. Because if
Hmm.
avoidance says, there's too much, I need to go out on my own, anxious says, I need more togetherness, because that's how I create security, right?
Yeah.
Avoidance creates security by going off on our side of the couch and not talking, and avoidance want to, or our anxious attachments to be together. Knowing that I feel supported, whether he's here or not, actually helps reduce his automatic anxious response. So it helps him feel safer in the process. And that's how we kind of come back together with more ease.
That's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. As you're talking about all of this, like this is a show about trance states, super states. What I'm coming to is one of the most powerful super states is slow down,
Mm-hmm.
right? It feels like we're in a go, go, go constant kind of, you could call that a trance state all the time, but it's a state where you're not even, you're not at awareness to be aware because there's too much going on. And to bring yourself to that slow place, that quiet place can really make a huge impact in how you show up.
Totally. To me, it's a question of do I want to be running on my automatic programming or do I actually want to be operating as me?
Yeah.
Like, I've got a ton of conditioning, we all do, and it can be real safe and easy to kind of live by that place. But if you want to be in a superpower state, if you want to, really be tapped in, then it requires you to slow down enough to be real with yourself and to be present. And I do think, and we can talk about this, you have an experience similar to mine, I'm imagining. You can let me know if I'm wrong. The more we do this work, the easier it is to drop into that place and to be
Hmm.
with everything, and then to choose what you actually want to do and who you want to be from it. When I first began doing this work, I was a super in my head person, and when I would slow down, I'd see a lot of stuff that maybe I didn't want to see,
Mm.
and that is a daunting emotional experience
Yeah.
to say the least. I was like 25 when I began this work, and I was like, wow, where was that in my closet? And so I just want to be transparent that even in that place, there was so much power. It's just that the power looked different. Like back then, the power was in tending to my garden and weeding the conditioning that was not supporting me and learning to be, more gentle with myself so I could live authentically. Now I go into that place and I see some stuff and I get to choose instead and go, okay, I'm really empowering this authentic desire today. And here's where I get to come from, the support that I get to create. I know some of this other stuff will try to trickle in, not even worried about it. It can be in my space, but it doesn't have to be who I am anymore. In the beginning, it was who I was. Now, it can be there. I hear it, but I'm taking the microphone back. It's not a free karaoke night over here. I'm gonna take my microphone back, give it to some other parts of me. Let's go.
Are there any so that's a big that's a big step in like realizing that you want that, and then taking the risks towards making that happen. What if someone was interested in starting to explore these ideas? Are there any risks to doing that?
Always. I mean, if you're going to be honest with yourself, you might hear spirit say, your body say, we need to leave this marriage, or you need to leave your job. And it might not be a today thing. We might hear that voice and say, okay, how do we create the structure we need to do this in a healthy,
Yeah.
supportive way? And sometimes we don't. We just do the thing anyway. So there's always going to be, in our body, risk to pursuing what's authentic. If it clashes with society, if it's different from how we were raised, if it's something that we desire, that we have yet to experience fully, your body, right, or technically your brain, but you'll feel it in your body, will say that is risky. Maybe you should stay in your comfort zone. Maybe it will try to shut you down. I hear when I go after really big things, my two phrases are, oh, I'm tired. I hear I'm tired a lot even when I'm fully energized. I'm like, oh, I'm too tired to work on this new venture, to do this new project. And I stop myself now. I'm like, that's so strange. I must be scared. But my body says I'm scared in a way to shut me down as I am tired. Or my relationship will come up with a conflict, doesn't even have to be a big one. And my automatic in my head is like, just end it. It will be easier. Break up now. And it's not even what I want. It's just a way to avoid the risk of having the vulnerable thing. So I will say risk is inherent in our body and our brain's storytelling of these experiences, learning what we want, going after it. But if you do want to mitigate that and play with that a little bit, you can actually use somatic work in a future casting session. So this is when you actually envision what it is you want your life to look like. But instead of coming from a brainy place, I recommend clients actually begin to relive that future vision one sense at a time. So we're actually slowing down the body. We're going to transport where we're at into that 5-year, 10-year, 20-year future, right? Athletes do this all the time. We're athletes of a different variety, whether you're on a track or, creating a happy marriage with your kids. So future cast what you want. That is outside of your comfort zone, that your body might say is risky. And just begin to live in that reality. Consider it an embodied meditation. What are the thoughts you have from that future place? What does it feel like to come home and to be able to just take up your family, wife and kids, and say, let's go out to eat. I want a treat. Or how about we do a trip? Where do we want to go? Nothing's off limits. And these experiences, as we begin to feel into them, actually feel in through the body and the spirit and the brain, we teach the body that, oh, it's safe. Oh, it's safe to have, 600 grand in your bank account or in your investments, right? Some that are liquidable you can use. It's actually safe to go out and offer you a new price point. Or it's safe to tell your partner you have this side of you that you want to explore that you're not sure they're open to, right? And these are the places where our bodies will shut down or our brains will shut us down. And so we really want to actually almost massage the somatic side of our bodies to say, oh, we can live this life and it can feel safe and it doesn't have to be so scary. And that can actually help break down some of the riskiness that our body or brain will tell us is so inherent in this thing, and make it easier to attract it and also work towards it.
I like that. What do you think of, what's giving you hope for the future? Where do you see using these types of uh, states for personal growth going?
So I don't know what is with my brain and early childhood development today, but I really do see hey, there's so much public discourse around this work that we're talking about, trans states included, and I really hope that it trickles down to K through 12 education. We saw like 15 years ago, mindfulness began to take more over in the West, and there are many schools that teach students everything from breath work to yoga or meditation, and these are just tools that we all can have, that we can tap into. And when I think about what a difference it would make in the world for like youth to have this as a skill, even going into college. Oh my gosh, people say college is the best of times and the worst of times. There's so much trauma that people get in our universities today. And this could really change a lot of it. I also think so, and I feel so deeply that when you look at the ailments of our society, especially in America right now, political discourse, the violence, a lot of it comes from unaddressed trauma, from a society that many of us we don't have access to dropping into our bodies and doing the work to remove the pain or the fear. We don't even know that we're living out some other person's programming, some societal conditioning. And I really think if we could use these states, which we are doing, but at a bigger level, to help people actually get in touch with their humanity
Yeah.
and their partners or their families, that, A, we'd be a much happier society, we'd be healthier for sure, but we'd also be a much more empathetic and caring society where violence and reactionary missteps are no longer on the news every night,
Mm-hmm.
where we can actually live with communal care and not just hold self-care as the one and only way to live a good life. These states, as much as they're for high-performance individuals, and they're also for all of us to create more access to loving ourselves and other people. And that really drives my work, and I really see that being what gives me hope. It makes me teary-eyed to say that. Because there's
Well,
such a need for it,
it's the future. It's the uh, al- allowing the next generation to have even more of these tools and utilize him at an earlier age than took me to get there for sure. Probably you as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And hell, I can't wait to give these to my mom and dad even more. So I will say we get to heal upwards and downwards. We get to support
Absolutely.
future generations and
Yeah.
help older generations.
Forwards and backwards through time.
Yes.
Craig, if somebody wants to connect with you or learn more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Totally. You've got two options. I will say I am on Instagram mainly. You can find daily content on improving your relationship, using somatic work to really improve your life in general. And you'll
Hmm.
find me at Craig Cassey Jr. That's CraigCasseyJr. on Instagram, or my personal website, craigcassey.com. Both these places you can learn more about me, but if you want to engage with me, come on over to Instagram. Always happy to chat, and always happy to support you on creating what's next in your relationship or elsewhere too.
Awesome. I will make sure to put those both or all of that into the show notes.
Thank you, Josh.
And
I
Craig,
appreciate
what's the one last insight you want the audience to leave remembering today?
it. Oh, okay. Quick grab bag of gold. If you want immediate access to what we talked about today, an easy way to do it is to pick one sense and learn to savor with it. So if you want to feel grounded and feel happier and be in your body and you're a foodie, go take a bite of a peach and just bring your entire intention to that one thing, and that will give you the same access to what we're talking about today. If it's sight, go stare at a tree. Touch, go hug your partner, and just feel. It can be that simple. And the more you do those simple practices, the more your life opens up to all the beauty that's been just waiting for you to arrive.
Awesome. I love that so much. Thank you. Thanks for being here today, Craig. And thanks for being a light in the world.
Oh, thank you, Joshua. It goes both ways. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please go ahead and leave me a 5-star review on this podcast. That's really the best way to expand this message, and it would mean a lot to me.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube so you can stay up to date with Super States. Also, let me know what kind of topics or guests you'd like me to cover in future episodes. You can just respond in the comments below. You can also find me on nearly all the social media sites out there at Joshua Ray Peters. That's REY. I promise I'll answer your comments. I'll see you all next week. Remember now, you carry the seeds of change inside. So stay curious, keep growing, and embrace your transformation.